You've depicted a new fault line in Europe, agreed. What is American foreign policy then today? Are we going to be drawn back into the centrality of the Russian-American conflict, or do we have some kind of a global view?
Well, first of all, we are also 20 years into the American imperium, if you will. It has only been 20 years since the United States was the world's only global power. In 1992, the last European global power fell, the Soviet Union. There is no European global power. There is no other global power. We neither wanted this condition, we are institutionally not ready for it, and we frankly don't know what we're doing. We are groping to an understanding. We're roughly in the situation that Britain was about 1800. They'd lost the North American colonies. They had huge financial problems. They weren't quite sure whether their primary interest was in fighting France or conquering India. They were all over the place. It takes a while to mature, and 20 years is not a while in history. The United States, however, has had a very, very, very consistent foreign policy for a century. And it has been simply this: that the amalgamation of Germany and Russia, or the Soviet Union, was inconceivable. That the only thing that would threaten the United States in a fundamental way was the combination of German capital, German technology, Russian resources, Russian manpower. 3 weeks after the Tsar abdicated, and it appeared that German troops were going to rush to the west and overwhelm the French and the English, that's when we declared war in the First World War and rushed 1 million men there. In the Second World War, we allied with a homicidal maniac against another homicidal maniac, Stalin against Hitler, in order to make certain that the Russians and the Germans remained split. This was the foundation of Roosevelt's war plan. At the last moment, although we were working in the periphery, we invaded Northern Europe on June 6, 1944, and contained, and we immediately moved toward a containment policy. The Cold War was entirely about German-Russian relations. The United States, on one level, is in constant chaos in its foreign policy. On another deep level, it has pursued the same policy for a century, and it is embedded in our DNA, that it is not simply Russia and China, or Germany and things of that sort, but Europe is the largest economic zone in the world. What happens there has massive significance, and this is where we go first when this happens. The problem we have is we have a bunch of peripheral commitments, that is to say, the future of Iraq, or what have you. We overreacted, which is very easy to say today, to 9/11, by becoming strategically engaged in the entire region. If our goal is to protect ourselves from terrorism, creating democracy in Afghanistan does not have a correlation between the two. We've adopted a reactive foreign policy because that's what weak powers do, and we were a weak power for most of the century. We reacted to threats, and we're still reacting to threats. The Romans didn't work that way. The British didn't work that way. And they also didn't work by sending their own troops to every circumstance they needed to. They worked by indirection, by balance of power, by maintaining relations with other powers. Transiting from the kind of foreign policy we had during the Cold War to a new foreign policy is very, very difficult. And so my argument would be that, first, our reaction to Russia is proportional given our historic commitment to certain American interests. Second, our involvement in the Islamic world is not wrong, it's just not going to work. You're not going to get from here to there what you wanted. It'd be very nice, but between Iraq and Syria, you're talking about a country of 40 million. An army of 100,000 is not going to pacify it. It can defeat the army, but it can't pacify the country. And sending 2 million troops to pacify this region is not in our interest. So my argument is that we're an immature country. I like to compare us to a 15-year-old, manic depressive. You know, in the morning, totally confident. In the afternoon, France said something bad about me, and I'm really going to sulk. Give us time. We're not ready for this. Our institutions aren't ready for this. We don't have a professional, self-aware, coherent foreign policy core. I know that Brookings and everything have these guys, but we don't have the institutions to manage our power yet. It will take several generations to get that. In the meantime, others have handled this position worse.